Greetings, fellow armchair Imagineers. In honor of Black History Month, we thought we'd pay tribute and showcase some of the great defining black characters in the world has come to love.
In celebration of Black Panther's release, it seemed best to start with some of our MCU favorites. After all, Marvel has created some of the coolest black heroes known to man.
So without further delay, let's explore the history of Luke Cage on Black History Heroes.
Yeah.
You know, Power Man! All right, Dragon. All right. Special event podcast time. This is February's, folks. It's Black History Heroes. So, Black History Month, Dragon, we've done a couple things. We did the very, very bizarre Our Friend Martin commentary.
Yeah, that one was more of a nostalgic pull. It was nostalgic for me, just kind of a bizarre commentary.
No, it was nostalgic for me, too. Don't get me wrong. But yeah, it was a bizarre commentary.
Yeah.
So, folks, I think that we have something in mind that's much more legitimate. This is going to be as conversational as we can possibly get it. Of course, we've gone through the road to Ultron. We've talked through Marvel before. We've unlocked Luke Cage, and we're going to untighten that lock once again, Dragon. We're going to free him even more. We're going to free Luke Cage even more than he's already been freed. Can you believe it?
I can't, but let's just do it anyway, man.
He's going to be the bad guy from Lethal Weapon 2. He's going to, have his own country, Dragon.
I think that's more Black Panther than Luke Cage. I think that's more diplomatic immunity.
Fair enough. Okay, Dragon, so really quick, let's talk about our first introduction to the character. And I think you and I we both, knew about this character going in to the Marvel Netflix stuff. I think it's fair to say that he was the second most familiar character that you and I kind of had a grasp on. Daredevil obviously being the most mainstream out of the four that were announced for Netflix. I would say Luke Cage was kind of second in line to Daredevil of oh yeah, I know that guy.
Yeah.
So yeah, Dragon, my first exposure to Luke Cage was an issue of The Amazing Spider-Man. I don't remember the exact number. I'm sure comic historians can tell me. But it was the issue that Luke Cage crossed over with Spider-Man. It was just this big, bombastic cover, Dragon. It was look out, Spider-Man. Here comes Luke Cage, the hero for hire. And Dragon, I gotta say, instantly that just kind of captured my attention. It sort of captured my imagination in a way. And for a long gap of time, I knew literally nothing about Luke Cage except for the fact that he was that one-off Spider-Man villain, the hero for hire guy. And little did I know, Dragon, all the rich history of this character that we'll get into in kind of a hopefully bite-sized format. So, Dragon, what was your exposure to Luke Cage?
Oddly enough, my exposure to Luke Cage is kind of a passe of small things. It's I want to say I've seen the original awesome, the yellow shirted tiara design of Luke Cage, way back in the day, many of us, because one, it's a very memorable costume. So I'm pretty sure I saw him. I didn't know who he was. I saw that image. So, when I eventually saw, when I pieced together who Luke Cage was, because you got to remember, Tiki, Luke Cage's had, well, as we've learned from the Netflix show, he has a very simple look that he has nowadays. He's a guy in a t-shirt with these bracelets usually. That's the usual Luke Cage, yellow shirt, silver bracelets. So basically, we see him have in the in the origin of Luke Cage. So at least they got him in there. So it's the only thing that's the only update they could ever do to kind of make this Luke Cage we have now even more perfect, if they ever gave him the bracelets in modern day. But my point is, you have those two definitive looks at Luke Cage. So I probably saw that look somewhere. It was very memorable. My first real sighting of Luke Cage, oddly enough, also includes Spider-Man.
Okay.
I was reading Civil War, and in Civil War, this is when I forget if it's in kind of the death of Captain America story that was around Civil War. It was around the time of that. It was towards when the Civil War was ramping down, I think. And this is where Spider-Man kind of bounced off of Iron Man's side onto Captain America's side, and he was wearing the black costume. This is after Aunt May got shot, and he donned the black suit.
Mm-hmm.
No, not the symbiote, but he just had a black costume. He was in a dark period, so he wore like a black costume. It was crazy. The point is, he was playing. There was this really great, memorable scene where Spider-Man was playing cards with the other sympathizers with Captain America, and that's where I really kind of met Luke Cage. And I kind of, man, who is this guy? It's like the one guy at the table, not really wearing a costume, because like the T-shirt Luke Cage. I'm saying, yeah, what's this guy's story? Why is he there? And I noticed. I looked into him a little bit. Like, what the heck's this guy's name? And I'm seeing Luke Cage. I'm seeing Power Man. Like, what the heck? Why does he have two names? And I see this bulletproof. Bulletproof. That's a really cool power. So I kind of dived down the whole of Luke Cage for a while, and I really, I guess that kind of was on the back burner for a long time. And then honestly, what really got me into Luke Cage again was through Deadpool, where again, Spider-Man, Deadpool, who knows? And there was a Deadpool fan series I loved the heck out of, which I basically pulled the Power Man clip from, which is M. Galusic, Michael Galusic's Deadpool fan series, which really got me into the character back in 2008. And the first episode features the heroes for hire, Luke Cage and Iron Fist. And basically Deadpool teams up with them, and that's really, oh man, this guy sounds, and they wrote him like 70s Luke Cage, and it was awesome. It's like, man, this is so much fun. I looked into Luke Cage, and of course down the line, we get Netflix, and it's just the rest of the history. It's like I had built-in familiarity with that character, just kind of looked into his past old 70s look and kind of the blaxploitation of it all, and just kind of how fun and how turned on its head that kind of got over the years, and I was super hyped for Luke Cage and was not disappointed when the show eventually hit.
Oh yeah. The show is a great celebration of the character.
But even Jessica Jones, we got super hyped for it then too. I mean, my God.
Of course, we'll get to that.
Sure.
So Dragon, let's get into the background of him really quick. Luke Cage is kind of a storied character with a storied past. So what is that past?
Without overcomplicating things, I just want to get into the creation of these guys with the background, by the way. It's more so like, and people know the origin. People, they have to, we can't do all the work for the nice folks at home, guys. You do look into these characters. And also, for the record, we're focusing really on the MCU side of things here, but we will go over the comics creation. This is probably the most comic-y section of the whole thing right here. Luke Cage's debut was in Heroes for Hire #1 in 1972. He was created by Archie Goodwin, who again is very he's responsible for Long Halloween. He's a really famed comics writer on both the Marvel side and the DC side. He also was Jim Gordon was year one onward was modeled after Archie Goodwin, believe it or not. So Archie Goodwin, a lot of big comics credits with him. He's a very down to earth guy, so I imagine a lot of that seeped into the Luke Cage character. You got Archie Goodwin and John Romita Sr., the wonderful John Romita.
Archie Goodwin was Luke Cage's in real life pops.
I would say so. And again, when you hear it, Archie Goodwin created Luke Cage, it really makes sense, because again, Archie Goodwin, he's the nice guy of comics. He's the guy. It was very much the pop of Luke Cage. I can see it absolutely. And John Romita Sr., he was the artist in the book and pretty much created the Luke Cage design, which is the famed runaway slave look, as Luke Cage calls it. Let's see. So basically, the creation of Luke Cage is all about, it reflected the blaxploitation of the 70s. You get the afros, the jive talk, and it was the main reason for this. The main reason of Luke Cage creation was to explore a different flavor of New York, because we've explored New York with the other Marvel characters. You got Hell's Kitchen, you got Manhattan, but we haven't really spent time in in Harlem. We don't really spend time in it was a more unique, unseen side of New York in comics instead of Queens or Hell's Kitchen.
Right.
And basically, just last thing is broad spectrum here. So basically, the book goes from the book went from Heroes for Hire to eventually Power Man to Power Man Iron Fist, due to essentially the blaxploitation. You see, the reason they paired. It's so funny. The reason they paired Iron Fist and Power Man up together, and the reason Heroes for Hire really took off with that, was because blaxploitation was waning as the years went on, and they had we have these two.
But then wasn't Kung Fu on the rise?
That's what I'm saying. It was like kind of like they kind of took it may have been, it was on the rise, but it also might have been like that also was waning. So they took kind of like, let's take our two wanings,
Oh, okay, right, right. Like cowboys and aliens,
Exactly.
just like
Let's take our two fading kind of fads in
sure,
comics.
sure.
Let's meld them together. Let's like make a great kind of funky kung fu mix. That's gonna be awesome. And the
And
rest is
hopefully the inevitable Netflix Heroes for Hire show that Netflix needs to do will be awesome.
well. I'm gonna give you an update on that real quick. I'm gonna say this. The word is they can't do any new Netflix shows, but essentially they can do that show. They just can't call it Heroes for Hire, but they can.
What?
However, and we
That'd
do
be
know.
pointless to not call it Heroes for Hire.
No, I'm saying they can't have a spin-off show called Heroes for Hire, but they can make Heroes for Hire within the show.
Oh, okay, I see what you're saying.
That's what I'm saying. It's like a technicality, and that's the thing. They can't
So
create.
it's like you could do both like seasons of Luke Cage and Iron Fist, but essentially have it be one big Heroes for Hire story.
And we know in both seasons we're gonna have crossover with these characters. Like I pitched originally way back when, where they would
oh
connect
yeah,
stories.
oh yeah.
They're gonna do that this coming season. They're gonna cross them over in their shows. Okay, so
so Legacy. Yeah, obviously Luke Cage, very interesting, Dragon, very interesting story of his legacy in the African American community. Because as you said, at first he started out as kind of like this this blaxploitation icon that, I imagine, like, of course, correct me if I'm wrong, Dragon, but there were characters before Luke Cage, like the original Falcon and characters like that. But they existed in other people's comics, and Luke Cage was the first African American character to get his own comic.
You're right about that. Falcon predates Luke Cage. However, yeah.
Also, isn't there an African American Howling Commando as well?
Yes, you're right about that.
I did my homework.
Yes, you did. And absolutely. So Luke Cage was the first black hero to get his own book, and that was a big historic thing in comics that Luke Cage kind of pioneered in that regard. Yes.
So I imagine it being very empowering for, I mean, at the very least, kind of like the, the nerdy kids in the African American community, if not everyone.
Yeah, let me run you down a list of the big things to really attach to the legacy of Luke Cage, like the big things that he kind of embodies as a character, like the things he kind of ushered in, I should say, less embodied, more ushered in. So again, they used the first black hero to get his own book with Heroes for Hire. He hero again wasn't even hero, so I was hero for hire because again it was a solo hero kind of doing this stuff.
Yeah, right.
Of course, he had a very powerful image on the cover, very much how like Captain America was punching Hitler on the cover. You gotta remember this at the time. This is a black man wearing chains as a symbol on his costume.
Sure,
back in the 70s. That's a powerful image.
And of course, that all fits in with the Cage imagery and the Carl Lucas backstory. Mm-hmm. That's really cool.
It's the ex-con story.
Right.
Basically, a guy, and it's the Marvel philosophy of kind of like what we've seen with Spider-Man, but kind of done with Luke Cage. Where you basically add the ex-con level to it. Where a guy is an ex-con, that's how he gets his powers. But again, despite the powers, he's an average guy. And here's where Spider-Man comes into it. Here is where he's a guy with powers trying to make ends meet. It's a guy with real life problems. Only we're not putting him in Queens. He's not a teenager in Queens. He's a grown man trying to live his life in at the time modern day Harlem.
Mm-hmm.
And a big icon as well. He doesn't get this might kind of because we're not quite there in the MCU yet, but he is a big icon for interracial relationships.
Yes, and Jessica Jones is definitely the next big point we should hit on, Dragon. Fun fact, I'm not sure if it's officially canon, if he's officially the guy, Dragon, but Stan Lee may have married Jessica Jones and Luke Cage. May have.
Really? Oh yeah, wait, I heard about. Yeah, I haven't read it. I didn't read the issue for myself.
I just watched it in a YouTube video and I saw the panel. I was like, yeah, that does look an awful lot like Stan the Man.
Yeah, I heard. Yeah, I read that thing in there. You're right. I think you're right about that. But again, I haven't seen it with my own eyes. I'm going to take your word. I'll take your word for it, though.
You know what? That should have been the freaking screen share for this episode.
Well, they do have. They also. I should let me redact what I said. We do see the interracial relationship in Jessica Jones with her and Luke Cage, but also they have a kid in the comics. That's another thing. That's a big thing for the comics. And have a mixed a mixed relationship breeding a child. That's something you don't see every day in comics.
Sure. And also, I just really admire the fact that they were able to take a character that was obviously so over the top and just kind of leaps off the page at you, and kind of bring him down to earth and bring him to a point that by the time in the comic history that he's Mary Jessica Jones and everything, we're ready to see a more grounded, more realistic, more humble version of Luke Cage in the form of the Netflix show. I don't want to skip there just yet if you're not ready, but I'm just kind of laying some groundwork.
Sure. I think that really, like the last bit, because a lot of Legacy will kind of hit at the end as well. It's kind of like where it is today. But like the last bit of Legacy is just kind of a really kind of mind blowing fact here is that, of course, two big names are hugely impacted by Luke Cage. Nick Cage got his name from Luke Cage.
Are you serious?
Yeah, I got Cage from Luke Cage. Yeah.
What?
You didn't know this?
No, I didn't.
Could have sworn we went over this.
Wait. So Cage isn't his real last name?
Remember, he's Coppola. He's related to Francis Ford Coppola.
What? Wait, what?
You didn't know any of this. What? How do you not know this?
Cage is a Coppola?
Nick Cage is a Coppola, yes.
How? What? I feel... No. Okay, you know what? Forget about all the Luke Cage stuff we've been talking about, Dragon. Let's shift the focus over to Nick Cage being a Coppola.
Yes,
what
he's
the
a
hell?
He's a
Where
Coppola.
have I been this whole time?
I'm pretty sure
there's a Coppola winery like 50 miles from me, Dragon.
I know he's a Coppola.
Mean I could just like pop into the Coppola winery and have a chance of seeing Nick Cage there?
I don't know how close he is with his father. Don't ask me. I'm not his therapist.
Oh my god, that's mind-blowing, Dragon. Wow. Okay, I'm sorry. That just kind of rocked my world.
If you folks at home aren't, I'm rocking Tiki's world right here with this Nick Cage.
You really are.
Okay, but so Nick Cage, big fan of not only Superman, with his son named. Okay, let me see if I can blow your mind here. You know, Nick Cage's son is named Kal for Kal-El, right?
I mean, I didn't know that, but I mean, that's less impressive.
I'm just saying, Nick Cage is a big...
Cal.
He is a big...
Get out of here, Cal. You're not a real Coppola.
Anyway, Nick Cage. The point is, Nick Cage is a comics fan, in addition to Superman, of course, with the whole Death of Superman Lives thing being proof of that. Additionally, he was a big fan of Luke Cage, and particularly another big name who was a huge fan of Luke Cage, particularly the early Luke Cage, Quentin Tarantino.
Oh, yeah. Oh, God. Oh, Dragon, if we ever got that dream Tarantino Luke Cage movie.
Yep. He's dying to do a period Luke Cage. I'd love to see it.
Oh, my God.
You never know. With Ant-Man and Doctor Strange with the multiverses, you never know. I mean, DC's not taking advantage of that yet. You never know.
I mean, if Tarantino can direct one comic book movie, that would be the one.
Yeah, that's the one he would do. If he had the power, he would do that. 70s Luke Cage. And he'd be in the costume for the whole movie. He'd be in the 70s outfit.
It'd be so great.
Okay, anyway, so that's really, I think that's enough legacy. Just again, we hit upon some big stuff with Luke Cage kind of ushered in again. The first black character to get his own book. That's a biggie.
Okay. So, so let's go into the MCU. Of course, his introduction was not in his own show, but in Jessica Jones, where he had a great arc with Jessica. And, of course, Dragon, you and I, the thing that we really latched onto was the bar.
Yeah, the bar, and we really and what's so great, Luke Cage is such a fantastic arc in the Netflix series. He does, and he wasn't an instant hero at the very beginning. He was the guy. He was a quiet guy, owned the bar. He cared about this bar very much because it was something he and his wife Reva Connors built together.
Mm-hmm.
And it's really,
I feel like the stuff with that bar is just such a great natural extension of the Netflix universe after the Daredevil stuff. It's a really good second chapter in that world.
Yeah, because again, one of our huge set pieces in Daredevil was Josie's Bar, which had a lot of character and represented, the Hell's Kitchen, where Matt grew up. And in this case, we see just kind of a guy who is a guy who, honestly, the bar is kind of a good reflection of Luke Cage at that time, because he's a guy who's grieving, and in a way, he's just kind of in a very static place. He's not trying to make any waves. He's not trying to move on. He's not trying to process his pain. He's just trying to live with it and just kind of get into a place of stability. So that's very much just kind of what a bartender would do. Is a guy who hears everyone else's problems but won't confront his own. Until Jessica Jones walks in the bar. That's not a joke. It's just what happens.
And of course, the bar is called Luke's Bar, but Dragon, in our heart of hearts, what is the name?
The
The
Cage.
cage. Come to the cage.
Of course, when that bar goes up and Jessica kind of rocks his world.
That is like a Breaking Bad RV style death of an inanimate object character right there.
It is, and of course we do feel the death of Reva, and we basically complicate Luke's love life even further as he's falling for Jessica Jones. He learns that the woman he loves technically murdered the other.
Her, Jessica.
Take care. No, I was saying how much of a prick the Purple Man is. Versus, I didn't say kill it. I just said take care of him.
God.
Oh, God, I am so excited for Jessica Jones season 2. Anyway, okay.
All right.
But yeah, so that's really where we met Luke Cage. And the one thing I want to hit on before we kind of move past it is the main thing I was super happy and excited for Luke Cage is that that we had the cool power set represented. He was a very he was a very simplistic guy, and we knew where he's going, but seeing where he starts off in kind of this opposite direction, but still cements kind of a guy who would be a hero for hire, a guy who would just need to make ends meet. Again, we have like the groundwork is set for kind of how we know Luke Cage, and I love that all of that was kind of set up in Jessica Jones. And in the Jessica Jones comic, Luke Cage is a pivotal part of that story. So it complemented Jessica Jones as much as it laid the groundwork for Luke. So it was a really great introduction in the MCU in that regard.
Mm-hmm. Right. So overall, Dragon, how do we feel about the character kind of in the MCU?
Well, I think that would definitely kind of bridge into a little bit of talking about the Luke Cage show, because that's where we really get to know Luke Cage. And on the whole, just I'm including everything there.
Luke Cage show was something that just really took me by surprise, Dragon. I got to admit, it was like where it's like I did not think it could live up to Daredevil and Jessica Jones. I really couldn't. And in some people's mind, like after the whole let's just say the first half twist happens, no spoilers for a show that's like 3 years old at this point. 2 or 3 years old. Anyways, after that first half, Dragon, some might say that Luke Cage falls off, but I just think that season, it's sure, the first half isn't as strong as the second. The second half isn't as strong as the first half, but by the same token, Dragon, the second half, especially kind of doing my homework into the comic book origins of Luke Cage, very much mirrors Luke Cage's comic book origins with Stryker and everything like that. So overall, Luke Cage is a very, very appealing whole as just content. But talking about the character himself, Dragon, I just feel like, actually, I'll kind of get I want to talk about the social impact of Luke Cage, but I'll get into that towards the end. But I have like a bumper sticker statement I want to say about Luke Cage that I'll end with, Dragon.
All right. So, I mean, yeah, the Luke Cage show, I had no doubt the Luke Cage show was going to be good because, again, I'm so impressed with him in Jessica Jones.
It's just the style of Luke Cage that really captivated me, like from the first episode, just the culture, the music, the different vibe it had.
Yeah. I mean, the show was, it was a fantastic way. It was probably the most fantastic way you could possibly adapt him. You had the 70s flair, and they had the 70s flair and charm, but in the modern day, and it didn't really miss a beat in that regard. Like, it owned it in the best way. It was a perfect blend, and I always say this about the Netflix shows. I think it's a good barometer for the Netflix shows, but my comparison always goes back to Luke Cage because they had such a great balance of this, like a good formula for this, where it's a balance of comic book spectacle and thought-provoking character depth, and we had both of those. And I think that's the key to getting the perfect Netflix shows. And we saw an Iron Fist where you have only half of this equation. You see where you end up with that, where you have just the comic book spectacle. It's not enough. It has its again.
It's so not enough.
But you see what I mean? Luke Cage is a perfect kind of comparison for that. Really,
yeah. I mean, Luke Cage. It's got captivating heroes. It's got thought-provoking villains.
Yes, and again, as we continue this arc of Luke Cage, and what I always love about the Luke Cage character so much is that it's the arc of a man, trying to lie low. A man who's trying to lie low and ending up taking on a cause. It's a guy who learns to, as he says throughout the show, he laid in the cut, and people got hurt. So he is a guy who learns, I can't have these powers and not do anything. I gotta I got to go out there and I got to take up this cause. Harlem is not my native home. And again, that was a fun change from the comics where he wasn't always a native of Harlem. And here it kind of made it more of an empowering kind of the visitor, taking up the cause. Almost, again, just kind of a broad comparison. It's almost kind of Moses-like in a way.
Right.
It's like,
after school special Moses.
In a way, yeah, and of course, Mike Coulter.
Stay in school, kids.
As we learned in Jessica Jones, Mike Coulter, he steps off the page to become Luke Cage. He really does, and that was just proven.
The one thing about Luke Cage, well, actually, I'll kind of save it for I have something to say about like the comparison between Luke Cage in his own show versus Defenders, but is this the proper place to bring it up?
Well, let me say one last thing just to address Defenders a brief, and then we'll just move on to the growth. Unless you want to just say, then we'll move on to growth, whatever. Let me just say, with Defenders has just got me to a place with Luke Cage where every time I see him, I'm just so pleased, happy, and giddy to see Luke Cage. Most of all, because it's like, oh my God, there's that character whose journey I love so much. There's a guy who's, again, he's kind of as Tiki said, he's kind of a walking after school special, but in the best of ways. He's a guy. He's as much as I love Daredevil, and I will defend the first season Daredevil, tooth and nail. I will say this with Luke Cage. I love the role model quality of Luke Cage. I think he has none of the other characters have that role model quality. As much as I love Matt Murdock,
tread lightly on that, Dragon, because I'm going to bring that up in my cultural impact speech on this.
Sure, but you see where I'm going with it, folks. There's Luke Cage. I have such delight, and there's even like every moment with him in Defenders is so satisfying and so true to that character. We just got into a place where we know Luke Cage. We know this guy, and we know for a second if he was out of character because you just gravitate towards the guy. He's like an orbit of being in the orbit of the most friendly planet ever.
God. I love that description, Dragon. That's amazing.
So let's mainly in bullet points here because we don't want to go like a whole road of Ultron thing here. But let's hit kind of the growth, like broad spectrum. Like how have we seen Luke Cage grow through the next?
Okay, so Dragon, really quickly, I want to address kind of the transition from. So basically, my feeling just in the MCU to kind of round out the MCU, and then we'll kind of talk about him like broad spectrum. Terms.
Sure.
So as you mentioned in Jessica Jones, he was a man in grieving. He was very much a broken man, kind of like the whole kind of the ironic thing about Jessica Jones was that he was the invincible man who was broken.
Yeah.
But then in his own show, we saw like the three-dimensional layers of Luke Cage. We saw him become a fully fleshed out, not that he wasn't fleshed out in Jessica Jones, but we really got to see all sides of Luke Cage. We saw him really start to become, the man Luke Cage. In Defenders, Dragon, like you, I'm so glad you were pointing this out because I think Defenders is the ultimate transition into now he is that walking after school special. Now he really is kind of like that beacon of hope. And so I think you're absolutely right, Dragon. I think we get that slow build to Luke Cage being that kind of like blaxploitation icon within the fabric of the MCU, where he's not as over the top as he ever was in the comics. But I do think kind of like he's almost kind of like, in a way, sort of like the closest thing we have in the MCU to Superman, just in terms of his Boy Scout morals.
Again, he is kind of that great middle ground between a Superman or a Captain America. Much just he's right in there. He's the down to earth version of both those guys.
Right. And so yeah, Dragon. Like I'm just tickled that the MCU, or the Netflix or whatever, I'm just tickled that it's taken us on that journey from we've seen the fully fledged out three-dimensional man, and now he's larger than life. Now he's just leaping off of the page by the time we get to Defenders.
Yeah, I think we started to kind of get into like the growth here, so again, kind of the broad bullet points here is that he starts off the ever-present, reluctant. We start with the ever-present reluctant hero arc from Jessica Jones to Luke Cage. That's kind of where we go from the start of him, Jessica Jones, to the end of Luke Cage, to about the end, roughly the end of Luke Cage, and basically his arc in Luke Cage takes him to becoming a folk hero and something mythic of like this is the guy who basically kind of outshined the Incredible Hulk's battle in Harlem. Kind of like this is fighting for the soul of Harlem, fighting for the support of Harlem against his own brother. A guy who's been victimized by the. We see he's a guy in his past. We see he's a guy who's been victimized by the system time and time again. He's confronted by his past, and again, this is like the mythic, uh, the biblical mythic kind of quality of Luke Cage's history. You can kind of say this, and it sounds so awesome. Where he's confronted by his past and his name. Everything is there's so much strength tied to his name. I mean, getting to the name Luke Cage. He was a
it almost kind of has that Batman quality to it.
Yes, where his previous, Carl Lucas's name was tainted. He ran away from that name. This system took ownership of that name that he can never use it without it becoming something dirty or something that's going to put him back within a corrupt system. He takes a name that is kind of an inverse of that. Where I'm Luke Cage. You tried to cage me and see what happened. And Crispus Attucks, as we saw in Luke Cage, is a symbol of the first. Of the first free man.
Oh yeah.
And again, you kind of see there's that correlation. We have all those great kind of those great moments throughout Luke Cage where we have Jackie Robinson, Crispus Attucks. We have those moments where Luke Cage knows this like the back of his hand. He celebrates it, and I love that in that Crispus Attucks.
Kind of it's almost sort of like a fatherly figure. Like, I'm not mad that you don't know your history. I'm just disappointed.
And I love Luke Cage as the educator. He's trying, and we get to see that again. He becomes more and more entwined in Harlem, despite him just trying to kind of keep his head down, like Bruce Banner, like on the run in Harlem initially. And he just becomes a part of it. Again, he kind of, just to compare it to some Marvel stuff here, he kind of goes from a Bruce Banner to a Steve Rogers, where I'm going to own it. I'm going to be a symbol for something. He's given the speech. He gives many awesome speeches throughout Luke Cage, and you kind of see him kind of. Making speeches like he's on the helicarrier in Winter Soldier, essentially. Right, it was like, right. If I'm the only one willing to make that sacrifice, then so be it. I'll do that. It's sort of like that. So it's his journey is he's confronting his past. He's reclaiming his name to move forward. Again, all of this to move forward. The most historic statement in Luke Cage. I love so much. And so,
Dragon, do you know if that comes out of the comic or not?
I really don't think so. I think it was created for the show, but I can't.
All right.
At the very least, I don't think it's from the comic. I think it might. If they're pulling it from something, I don't know what it is, but I don't think it's from the comic.
Be crazy if there was like one freaking panel in the comics that was like forward always.
I don't know. I would love it if I would be astonished if that were the case. I would love that. But again, I don't think so.
Yeah.
And again, it's like he's trying to move forward in life past the injustice and past the tragedy. Imagine again for a black character, that's a huge motivator for your character right there as a guy. It's so it's something that Dragon, like, let's face it, let's kind of talk about the elephant in the room here, the fact that we're two pasty white men talking about black characters. We are the whitest, most glistening men you folks.
Oh, why thank you, Dragon. Why thank you. My whiteness astonishes me every time I look in the mirror.
I'm saying, remember when SpongeBob and Patrick tanned themselves to the point of breaking the tan barrier? That's pretty much us.
All right, so I'm just saying, like, I just want to make the point here while we're kind of into the cultural impact and everything that folks, look, Luke Cage is an empowering character in ways that Dragon and I simply cannot even fathom with our simple view of the world, because the whole idea of the black man being brought down by the system, being profiled for the color of his skin, being imprisoned. Obviously, Dragon, that's not a struggle that you and I have had to go through. So I just want to address that. I just want to kind of say my piece on that. And of course, moving forward as we go through all these characters, just kind of address that, we're kind of looking in on as fans of history and just fans of these characters in general, and sort of breaking some barriers here. But there are some, like I said, there are some cultural roads that Dragon and I simply cannot walk down due to obvious reasons. So just want to address that, Dragon.
But bridging off of that, though, before, no pun intended, just to keep going with Luke Cage's arc. So again, we have that great symbol of what Luke's journey was with the whole moving forward thing, and again, just what he's trying to move past. And you look at eventually where he goes here. He becomes part of a team. He was a solo guy who's trying to keep to himself, just running a bar. Meets Jessica Jones, and of course, becomes a mythic symbol. And then after that, accepting that he is a hero that he is looked to as a hero, he becomes part of a team, part of the Defenders, and he mentors the most troubled of the Defenders. He mentors the rambunctious Danny Rand, and he makes him better.
Yo, that's scamp, Dragon. That's scamp.
only Luke Cage could better Danny Rand. Only Luke Cage could. And again, it's so great because again, we love Heroes for Hire, and we just love that pairing, love friendship, we love the teases. Again, you call Luke Cage a hero for hire, it's like, oh boy, again, this before Iron Fist came out. At the very least, it got so hyped for Iron Fist alone, and just when these two are together, it's electric. And these guys,
that's just one. I mean, okay, look.
Say what you will with Iron Fist, when those guys are together, it's magic.
I'm just saying, like Mike Coulter is literally just carrying the other guy on his shoulders.
He is, but he's also, I think he's schooling him a little bit there, and that's what the arc is too. Is like he's teaching Danny Rand, kind of the young guy versus kind of the wizened ex-con.
Right.
And he's by the end, he's definitely he accepts that he has the heroic bug, and now he just need a label for it. And that's honestly where we're at with Luke Cage now. He's just looking for a label, which would be the Heroes for Hire small business. That's where he's going. And that's the thing, like, he knows he's a hero, he just doesn't necessarily know how to kind of make it into like a lifestyle, which is what Claire is constantly kind of. Of course, Claire Temple is a wonderful Luke Cage character who eventually ended up with Luke Cage, and that's just wonderful.
Yes.
But yeah, I just love that's where we're at Luke now. He's accepting, I got this heroic bug. I don't know how to channel it, but I'm just gonna do good things because it's just who I am.
All right. So, Dragon, let's quickly go through kind of a bullet list of bullets of kind of defining moments of Luke Cage. Obviously, his premiere comic would be one. His crossover with Spider-Man being another one. His relationship with Jessica Jones, ultimately being married to Jessica Jones.
Sure. Let's try to keep more Netflix related with the moments. But I mean, yes.
Well, I'm sorry. I'm just kind of going over the character as a whole with some of the big hallmarks of his character.
Well, sure. Sure. Yeah. For me, I mean, the Genghis. There's so many great moments. I'm just speed through. I always loved the Genghis Khan. He's like that first moment, that first episode, Genghis Khan. He's where he stands up for the his landlords essentially, and basically at the end after after defeating the bad guys, which again looked cool, and that was what was so well marketed. It's like the guy punching him, and of course his wrist breaking. That's wonderful, but it still gets me. And when I just look at this moment, it's just that's Luke Cage. It's twofold. It's like afterwards, the Connie, she goes up to him and she gives him money again, which eventually is kind of his path where he's going to be
right.
Basically, he's an A team. He's part of the A team. He's kind of it's a 1 to 2 man A team essentially is what his destiny is. But regardless, it's like he says, "No, ma'am, don't you understand? I owe you money." And again, like she's riding him earlier on for like all the rent that he owes her, and it's like no, he's so darn respectful and so well mannered, and at the end there's him saying, "I got you," because saying, "Well, look all the good you did here. Now they're going to keep coming back, and then I'll be here because I got you." I mean, that's a Luke Cage I can get behind right there. Luke Cage looking out for people, looking out for the downtrodden in Harlem. That's awesome.
Yeah, of course. The spoiler alert, folks. The death of Pops, Dragon. The death of Pops, and kind of like the aftermath of that and everything. Very much a defining moment in Luke Cage's life in the Netflix show. And
how Pops, of course, cements kind of the wholesomeness of Luke Cage. That's the big stamp that Pops really brought to Luke with the swear jar.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. And of course, again, the moving forward philosophy and getting him out of the cut. So Pops was pivotal, and you're right. That scene is it's still haunting, and playing the Bronx Tale music after it always gets me.
Confronting Cottonmouth at the funeral.
Yes, and again, these speeches, man, I tell you, these.
Yeah.
That's the episode where he calls him Harlem's
drawing the line in the sand right there in front of everyone.
I love how Cottonmouth calls him out on being the Harlem's Captain America in that episode. But yeah, of course, one of my favorite moments, if I had to pick one moment from Luke Cage, and there's so many good ones, I still think saving Method Man is still just one of my favorite bits because I just love.
Oh, that was fantastic! Yeah.
Again, there's so many good things in that scene. Not just like, hey, it's Method Man. Not just that, but
it's just a great way to kind of have the real world sort of crossover into the MCU in a fun way.
Yeah, but I mean, I love him walking into it's like it's a classic scene where Luke Cage, the bulletproof man, he walks in there, and you have this convenience store robbery, and again, it's such an average kind of crime, like it's such a realistic, like everyday crime going on there. Just
Uh-huh.
walks in there and he dispatches with these guys easy, and the one guy shoots him like multiple times. I didn't mean that. Just him, this crook shooting him multiple times, saying I didn't mean that. And of course, just give me your phone, fool. He just knocks him out with a slap. Again, and Method Man bearing witness to the awesomeness of Luke Cage, is kind of the everyday. Again, this is a New Yorker as a hero. You have to deal with this stuff, and Luke Cage is the guy who shrugs it off, says, "Hey, it's heroic. It's a day in the life," and Luke Cage is starstruck by someone else instead of being starstruck by people being starstruck by Luke Cage. It's wonderful.
Mm-hmm.
Of course, the ending. The ending of Luke Cage is huge. It's
sure, and also just really quickly to highlight the the fight in the fight in
Defenders?
the Apollo. The fight in the Apollo was amazing.
Certainly. But yeah, the ending speech is the perfect button on Harlem there, where Luke Cage, we see what he's learned the whole season, and that's it. Honestly, that bit always wonderfully kind of gets me in the end there, where it's so wonderfully edited. We summarize as he's explaining his actions as kind of a vigilante superhero in Harlem to Misty Knight, and he's saying, I laid in the cut, let all this stuff happen, and Harlem and he basically gives them this beautifully written speech about all the wonder stuff that Harlem does. Where it's like Harlem, it's culture, it's black culture, politics.
Essentially, he's like kind of speaking the truth about Harlem.
Yeah.
Whereas Mariah, throughout the whole season, has been
using it to capitalize.
Right.
And basically, she's perverted the mission for Harlem, which again is what Luke Cage genuinely is embodying here. Like, this is what we have to preserve in Harlem, not preserve it for a profit or preserve it for political gain. Of course, ending on just him quoting Pop, and just that moment, it's where he says, Pop had a mantra. He said twice. The kids were pissed, but he always said it. Move, never backwards. Always only forward, always. And just that cut to the Pop saying forward. It's great. And if I had to pick one scene, like for like the awards for like all, if I had to pick like for an award that Luke Cage got, it would have to be that scene. Like, that's the Mike Coulter Emmy scene right there. That's the scene. And of course ending on Luke Cage sacrificing himself as well too. Sacrificing his freedom they tried so hard to preserve, and just for the betterment of Harlem, because it was the right thing to do. And and Defenders again is just Luke Cage helping.
I've heard a lot of people kind of criticize sort of we've gone over this in our Defenders podcast, Dragon, but people have criticized sort of the way that episode 1 of Defenders starts out as like individual like standalone stories of their own shows, but I think Luke Cage kind of embodies that the best, because episode 1 to Defenders gives us the closest thing to kind of like a 20-minute syndicated serialized Luke Cage after school special styles show.
In a way, with the Millers, yes, with the taking the Miller, Cole Miller under his wing, and of course Dolores. The scene with Dolores Miller is my favorite.
Oh, Jesus Christ! I'm already just like I'm not really prepared to revisit that scene.
I'm just saying that the most, again, it's not after as much. Again, don't know, I love the after school quality, but kind of just the everything I love. If there's
that scene is definitely not an after school special.
What I'm saying though is that if there's one scene in Defenders, much like all the moments I've listed out for Luke Cage, if there's one scene in Defenders that embodies everything I love about Luke Cage, if there's one scene, it is that scene with Dolores Miller. Where he's comforting Dolores Miller, the mother who's lost her children, and oh my God, it's like he's hugging the orphaned mother. It's like, oh my God, it's so moving. It's like that Luke Cage should be that shoulder to cry on for the mothers who have lost their children. It's like, yes, like that's the power of that character, man. That's like that. It's that comfort and security you want in a character. It's so moving.
Uh-huh.
Oh yeah. So again, there's a number of great moments. I think those are like some of the. We kind of talked about Crispus Attucks, and we've talked about him standing at the Cottonmouth, the funeral. We've talked
Iron
about
Fist fight.
Certainly, I think those are kind of it was some big defining moments. For Luke Cage. I think it's
okay. So, Dragon, are you ready for my bumper sticker statement about Luke Cage and his impact today?
Sure.
So, folks, there's been a lot of discussion on social media, and this is not a phrase that I like to throw around at all at this channel. As some of you who know me might know, I stay very neutral when it comes to politics. Frankly, I just kind of phase it out. I just kind of like don't even really pay attention to it. I'm kind of like Switzerland when it comes to that. And I always like to have that kind of bleed over into the channel as well. I kind of have a strict no politics policy on this channel. But I digress, Dragon. I have to bring up the phrase social justice warrior here. I have to bring it up. And I know in some circles that's kind of a dirty word. But Dragon, my bumper sticker statement is that Luke Cage embodies everything that a social justice warrior should be. And that's really all I've got to say on it. That's kind of my mic drop moment. That's the impact that Luke Cage has. He is a fighter for social justice. He is everything that the cause for social justice should be. And he is a clear beacon and example to follow. And I think we need his light now more than ever. And like I said, I don't like to get political here, and I'm kind of like treading on some dangerous ground of getting political. I don't want to get into specific issues that I may or may not be addressing. But as I said, I'll repeat it one more time, Dragon. Then you can give your piece. Luke Cage is what a true social justice warrior, in the best sense of the word, should be. All right, I'm done.
Yeah, I think there's a lot of truth there. For me, again, Luke Cage. It's no secret I'm a big fan of the MCU Captain America. So honestly, again, in this show, where again it's within the same universe, just that being thrown around, I think has great weight in the best way with Luke Cage. Where he is Harlem's Captain America in many ways, and that he is this. He's that great role model, but in addition to just kind of being as the symbol as he is, again, the image we had before us here, the bulletproof hoodie, which again was by the way specifically chosen for the show, which is something Luke Cage, again, we kind of talked about this earlier. Luke Cage is known for the yellow shirt. He's just known for just being the guy in the shirt with usually the bracelets. Just a bulletproof guy with average shirt. The hoodie was such a great invention for the show because it had that with the use of Method Man, with Bulletproof Love, the song. We have that great sequence, that great montage where we see everyone is adopting the bulletproof hoodies as the symbol of Luke Cage, as I guess somewhat echoing kind of the need for social justice to a degree, where it's again is a symbol of just of bad things happening to good people, bad things happening to innocent people or good people, and it's something that need to be done about that. And again, the power of just a someone who could have that done to him and who can stand up to it, someone who can stand up to a lot of bad stuff in the world coming down on them. And again, just the plight and the journey of Luke Cage, I just endlessly. We had a whole segment called, the Power Man's the plight of plight. Sorry,
Power Man's plight.
It's Power Man's plight in Luke Cage. And that's for a reason, because the journey of this character fascinates me. It's powerful. It's a defined journey. And now we're getting great shows. I think Luke Cage opened the door to. I think just the quality of Luke Cage really spoke to a lot of people. And Mark Bernard on Fat Man on Batman, whose opinion I trust, he's a really good writer, and also he speaks to a lot of truth in that, there aren't a lot of black icons represented in TV shows. There really aren't. There's the demographic, the black demographic really isn't well represented, in many ways, especially the very least with superheroes, it's not really well represented. We're getting shows like Black Lightning, which so far
I really need to check out Black Lightning.
So far, along with Luke Cage, or seem to me, again, bear in mind, I'm a bit of an outsider on this, but seem to me, again, even from what I've heard from Mark Barnes, they're well representing. It's like you're watching it finally. It's like, yeah, we're finally being represented well.
Mm-hmm.
It's a more inclusive, strong representation than there has been before. And speaking to that, and of course, Mike Coulter is beloved in the role, and he's so engrossing and he's so perfect. Everyone's loving Mike Coulter.
He was the villain in Girls Trip, and I was like, no, I can't not like Mike Coulter. No. Movie, don't even try.
The first time I saw Mike Coulter, I saw him in Men in Black 3 as an army colonel with a really interesting reveal, with a really heartfelt reveal.
Okay.
Anyway, so with Luke Cage, I think the main thing I want to hit with all this, where I'm kind of building to, is that Luke Cage, he's a symbol of the black stereotype turned positive role model. I think that's really, that's kind of the big thing Luke Cage really represents there. He's kind of taking the 70s kitsch of black exploitation, and that's how we used to know him. That's how we kind of make fun of him a little bit in the show. Where Claire Temple says he's kind of corny or sound like an after-school special, or we see him in the in the classic Luke Cage costume. Even he acknowledges, "Oh man, I'm not wearing this thing." It's a symbol of. With him, we show a symbol of moving forward. With the Netflix show, with kind of where we're at with him now in the modern day, he is a guy moving beyond his past. It encourages us to embrace the second chance. It encourages people to embrace the second chance. Luke Cage, he'll talk people down. He'll educate them before he's handling things with his fist. I'm engrossed with this character before he's just representing his awesome power set. I'm down for everything he's saying. I love the fact he can. He can inspire change in people. Again, he's a very powerful speaker. He is kind of, and it's kind of hard to nail down who exactly Luke would be. I guess he's a little bit more, given the proactiveness, I'd say he's kind of the MCU's Malcolm X in a way. I think. I don't know. He's kind of a cross, a little bit of a cross between Martin Luther King and Malcolm X. I think there's definitely some Malcolm X. In the speaking, of course, I say this because Luke Cage, you can see in the opening, he always has Malcolm X emblazoned on his skin in the opening credit sequence.
Mm-hmm.
So it's a character who's it's all about appreciate your history and your growth, because it's a guy who ran away from his past and ultimately he fought to accept it. I'm going to take what happened to me. I'm going to own that, and I'm going to move forward. And I'm not going to be afraid of who I was. Yes, I was an ex-con. I faced injustice, but I'm moving forward here, and I'm a hero. Like it or not, I'm a hero, and just. Again, I'm endlessly fascinated by Luke Cage, and I think he's such a great character. I think just such a representation of of the various cool black characters that Marvel has. The strong, the remarkable black characters that Marvel has, and it's Luke Cage. I think he's definitely in the top 5, and we're going to explore that further as we go on.
Oh yeah. All right, folks, that's all for now. Until next time, when we talk about the heroes who made the leap from page to screen, showing us a world not simply black or white, but brimming with color as well as character.
With our next installment of Black History Heroes.
That won't be about Power Man.
Power Man.
Power Man. Power Man.
Always.
All right, have we worn out that joke enough yet, Dragon?
I'm Luke Cage!
I'm Luke Cage!